Open enrollment at Mile High Academy starts December 15th. Join a community that prioritizes faith, academic excellence, and meaningful connections. From early childhood to upper school, we're here to support your students' growth in a Christ-centered environment. Ready to start your journey? Call us today at 303-744-1069 or visit us at milehighacademy.org. Discover why so many families say you belong at Mile High Academy.
Welcome back to Living Generously, the podcast where we explore the heart of giving and the impact of generosity in our lives and our communities. Today we're diving into a topic that is central to the life of faith, tithing. And to help us with this topic, we have Darin Gottfried. He is the treasurer of the Rocky Mountain Conference, and we're excited to talk about this topic with him because tithing is more than just a financial transaction. Tithing is about trust, it's about community, and it's about stewardship. So we're going to unpack this topic today and understand a little bit more about the responsibility that we have with God and also with each other. Tithing sometimes can feel a little bit mysterious. Some people wonder, where does my money actually go? And I think that's a fair question. So that's exactly what I asked Darin. Where does the money actually go and how does it work? Why can it be so confusing for some of us sometimes?
That's a good question, Jose. One of the things I think of is how much that tithe does beyond just even the local church. Sure, it provides money to help cover the cost of a pastor locally, but it also goes worldwide and helps the church beyond your local church. It's something that makes an impact at so many different levels within the church, which is one thing that's unique about the Adventist church is our structure. I know sometimes it gets confusing because people think it just disappears into different levels, but each of those levels does a different ministry part, and it also helps smaller churches and it helps areas where they can't come up with enough money to fund pastors, and it's kind of like a socialization of the tithe, and it just makes a big impact beyond yourself. And I think that's one of the things I look at is I try to remove my selfishness from when I give to say this is going to make an impact beyond me, beyond my local church, and beyond my local community in the Adventist church. So typically tithe returned within the Seventh-day Adventist Church structure is used to mostly pay personnel. That's its main purpose, whether that's the local pastor or the teacher at the local school. It helps with a portion of the teacher's salary, as not all of that is funded by tithe. But then it also helps with the administration side of the church, onto legal expenses, etc. There's a lot of things in there that it covers, but its main purpose is the employment of workers within the field, whether that again be any of those fields. Local offerings are more specific to the local church congregation to help that church realize its mission within its local context, whether that again be paying the utility bills or helping do evangelistic outreach into the local community. Is those local offerings are very important just to help keep the local church operating in its community.
The structure that Darin describes is a little bit of a social network of generosity, where your tithe makes an impact not just on your local church, but across the world. And that's an incredible thing to be a part of, isn't it? However, sometimes people may not have the means to contribute, and it can be difficult, especially when the economics are not adding up or the math in your budget is just not happening. So for many people, taking that step to tithe can feel daunting. Like there's just not enough left over at the end of the day. Here's what Darin encourages us to think about, though, on the flip side, and how we can think of that personal responsibility on a community level and on a church to individual level, whether they're givers or not.
I think most people that have given, especially if they're challenged to give, they may think, well, I don't have enough money to do this. But most people that I've talked to or that have struggled with this, if they put the tithe aside first, it seems like all of their other expenses and struggles get taken care of. And I think prioritizing that giving first is something that's really important so that you are putting that trust in God that He's going to follow through and help you with all your other needed things. And in almost every case, I've seen it where if someone takes that step and steps out and gives, that everything else just kind of falls in place and you're taken care of. You might not have an exorbitant amount of extra money, but people are taken care of and you're able to live a pretty happy life. I believe that the church, the conference, division, everybody has a responsibility back, not just to the givers, but to God, because we, in our different levels, have been entrusted to to use this money to best benefit not just members, but potential members as well. And I think that's the whole purpose of tithe, is to bring more members in and to benefit people. It's to show them the love of God that we have, the message that we have through the Adventist Church. And if that benefit of reaching out to the community isn't happening, that means that perhaps tithe isn't getting spent in the most beneficial way at a given level. And that's where the responsibility lies at, again, both the conference and local churches, to see how is that money best used for ministry to benefit its current members and potential members going forward. Because there should be a benefit out of giving. You should be getting back some kind of spiritual care from the institution. Again, it's not a quid pro quo thing, but you should be getting that benefit back. And not just an internal feeling of, oh, I've done my responsibility and I've passed on money. There should be some support coming back to every person that gives and supports the church.
As Darin said there, the importance is to think about how we can live a generous life because we have a generous God. After the break, we explore a little bit more about tithe and how it's connected to what God has already given us and how we can think about that as we give back to our communities in our time, in our talents, and in the way that we reach out to them. Thank you for listening to Living Generously. We'll be right back.
The Rocky Mountain Conference, in partnership with the Kansas-Nebraska Conference, is proud to announce that registration is now open for a teen retreat experience at Glacier View Ranch, January 17th to 20th. Greater Summit is a teen retreat event. Highlights include opportunities for spiritual growth, creating lasting memories with friends new and old, and engaging in winter activities, including snow tubing, snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, or simply engage in conversations with other teens while sipping on a cup of hot chocolate by the fire. Cost is only $75 for the entire weekend and includes housing, food, and all activities. All teens need to have a sponsor present. Space is limited, so be sure to register today by going to www.armsyouth.org/Greater Summit. Experience community at the summit.
We're back on our podcast about tithing and exploring the themes around it. One thing that I talked with Darin about is how has his picture of God changed when it comes to living generously, giving back, and understanding the community, and how has he seen churches who embrace that picture actually reach out to others? What can we learn from those churches so that we can live more generous lives?
A good question, a hard question, because I've known a lot of people that have been stuck in that if I don't give, I'm not going to be saved, or vice versa. If I give, I know I'm going to get a blessing. And I don't believe those things are always directly connected. I believe I've always received a blessing from giving, but it isn't because I'm giving to get the blessing. And I think that is the wrong attitude to go into tithing, offerings, any type of giving. Is we should be giving with a joyful heart, and not because we're expecting something back, but because we want to see that we want to fulfill our responsibility to God, and we want to help other people, and we put others and God and the church ahead of ourselves. I think a lot of times in my life, I've fallen short of doing exactly what I should do within the church context or whatever context is. I know I've fallen short, and I believe every single person has, of being the person that we should be in God's eyes. But that doesn't mean that we aren't going to receive the benefit of going to heaven. We still receive his outpourings of blessings here on this earth. We know we have that eternal life to look for, even though that we haven't done enough to actually earn it. And I think that's one of the key blessings I see in coming back, that takes away that selfishness in me, because I know even if I give everything, I'm still not giving enough for the blessing that I'm going to be receiving. So one of the things that I've seen be the most successful in a local church context is when its members are involved. If they're doing outreach into the community and they're getting the members to do the outreach into the community, the need becomes more transparent. And as people invest their time, they are often also more willing to invest their money, because they see how the resources of that local church are making a difference. And I think the more you can show how a congregation is making a difference in its community to both its members and the community at large, the goodwill that they're getting from that and the example that they're setting will encourage more people to give and support that financially. Because some people are able to give of their time, some may have money that they can give, and if they find the thing that they can give to help support that church's mission, it'll just help everything grow and expand from there. So I think starting small, even if a couple members just start some type of community outreach event that shows that the church is doing something to help those less fortunate, I think that's something that can create a snowball effect and grow into a very large missional outreach from the local church.
As I listen to Darin, something that comes to mind is that God is extremely generous with me and how I need to think about giving, not as a requirement or as something that's going to save me, but as something that makes me a better person. But one theme that is extremely relevant to the topic of tithing and giving is the topic of transparency. When I give, I want to make sure that God's money is being used in an appropriate way. So how do we get involved in that? And coming from a treasurer, I found this answer very revealing and very helpful. I was actually encouraged when I listened to what you're going to listen to, because it reminds me that it's not just trusting into the void, but it's also saying, how can we collaborate together as a team to create better results in our communities?
So of course, as a treasurer, I do a lot of presentations at town halls, and anybody listening, I'd always encourage you to go to your local town hall and hear the presentations, see where tithe is being used, and always ask questions. I think it's always good that people are asking, where is my money going and what difference is it making? One of the things to do is ask your local pastor where the money is going. They've usually heard presentations from the conference as to where things are going. They can help fill you in. Your local church treasurer may have some help that they can give as well, or even reaching out to the conference and just asking questions of, I'd like to know how my tithe is being used. And I do not believe there's anything wrong with that. I think a member should always be holding their church and their conference responsible for the use of God's money. And I think those are good questions to ask. And the more we know about what difference that money is making, the more we may be willing to give. I think the more transparent any organization is to where the money that they are entrusted with is going to show people that they're not just doing what the organization says they should do, but also doing what the individuals want them to do. I mean, we're showing the members, your tithe is going to help with pastors, with churches, with schools, and all of these things that we can actually show them what impact their tithe dollar is making, not just on their local church, but their conference and the North American division and beyond. So to any church member, I think this is, again, where a lack of communication, I think, or a lack of transparency, lack of openness, is that a lot of times a local church member doesn't know what resources there might all even be available. And I'd say the first step would be is to approach your local pastor and just start a conversation with them. If you have an idea of something you'd like to start in the local church, there may be some funding out there. For example, through our ACS director, there are funds available from the North American Division to do community outreach, things that we can apply for grants from the North American Division, that money will come into the conference and then go directly toward whatever local project that is. Evangelism is something as well that there are evangelism funds available from the conference where we can help do evangelistic series. Now, we do ask the local pastors to submit those requests in for evangelism. But if you have an idea of something, maybe your pastor hasn't thought about an evangelistic outreach event, again, run that by your pastor and ask your pastor to run that by the conference, because the conference may have some funding available. Going into 2025, there's also an NAD-sponsored evangelistic push called Pentecost 2025, where the NAD is making up to $3,000 available for every church and school to do an evangelistic outreach into the local community. So again, ask your pastor about that if your church already isn't planning something for that for next year.
Before we wrap up today, I want to make sure that you listen to that initiative that the North American Division has, Pentecost 2025. They are grants for every church and school for evangelistic outreach. So if you have an idea for a project, now is the time to share that with your pastor or with your conference so that your church can participate next year in this evangelism outreach in this way to better our communities. As we close, I want to leave you with this. Living generously is about more than giving. It's about trusting. It's trusting that God will take care of your needs, trusting that your contributions are making a difference, and trusting that you're part of something bigger than yourself. Our final question for Darin today is, what does it mean to be a good steward? What does it mean to live a generous life?
So that's a good question. I believe living a generous life, being a good steward is again, not just of money. I believe that is a pretty big part of it. Is I want to be generous, not just to my church, but to also people that I come into contact with that may not have the resources that I do. I think generosity is also a huge time commitment. I think giving of your time freely with no expectation of return in some areas to, again, help the underprivileged, to help your church community is an investment of my own that I think is just, it's something that I can easily do. Again, my time is something I can easily give towards things to help projects along. I also believe being generous is also sharing God's love. With every person I come into contact with, I want to treat them like they are a brother and sister in God's kingdom, and I hope to see them there. They are a friend that I haven't made yet. I just hope to share the love that I feel in myself with everybody that I come into contact with. And I hope they feel that, and I hope that's something that I'm easily able to share with every person I come into contact with. I'm very appreciative to work here in the Rocky Mountain Conference. I think our members are generous in many different areas. We're very happy to see the donations that we see come in financially, but also I think the time commitments from our local leaders. There is a lot of responsibility placed on our elders, our treasurers, our deacons, and I'm just so happy for everybody's generosity and giving of their time in the local church to see that church be successful in their local area, and just appreciate everything that everyone does here in the Rocky Mountain Conference to further the mission of the church.
That was our episode with Darin Gottfried, Treasurer of the Rocky Mountain Conference. If you enjoyed today's episode, share it with someone who might need encouragement in their journey of generosity. Let's keep the conversation going. If you have any questions and you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to put them in the comments below. We'll be interacting with you guys, understanding a little bit more about this marvelous topic. We have new topics coming out every week on different ideas of how to live a more generous life. Not only about money, you'll see tips about elders, about deacons, about creating community in a better space within the Seventh-day Adventist Church. So make sure to subscribe, share it with a friend, and if you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, make sure to give us a rating. It really helps us reach new people. Thank you for listening to this podcast, and we'll see you next time.
For more than 110 years, Mile High Academy has been a place where kids like me can learn, grow in faith, and make awesome friends. Everyone here is important, and teachers help us do our best in school and life. Come see what it's like to be part of our family. Visit milehighacademy.org or call 303-744-1069 to find out more. Mile High Academy, because you belong.